Coming up on today's show, Stephanie Chisolm is an aerialist, movement artist, and tantric practitioner. She has been a professional performer for 13 years and uses her in-depth body knowledge in her tantric work to inspire deep somatic healing in herself and her clients. Stephanie is passionate about discovering freedom through the body, art as a tool for transformation and healing trauma through sound, breath, movement, and emotional release. Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Shambliss. Coming up after the break, my conversation with Stephanie Chisolm.
Are you bored with dick pics? Do random hookups and empty chats kill your vibe? Tired of being catfished or wasting time with messages from faceless profiles? Then you need to get Monogamish, a new dating app designed for singles and couples of all genders and sexualities looking for dates, mates, and everything in between. Access exclusive matchmaking events, workshops with dating and sexuality gurus, and exclusive offers so hot you'll just have to see for yourself. Download Monogamish for free from Google Play or the Apple App Store. Monogamish. Explore fluid relationships.
Welcome back to Loving Without Boundaries, where I am really excited to be here with Stephanie Chisolm, who I had the pleasure to meet at Open Love Experience this past October 2022. And she was one of the amazing performers that was there the final evening. Just incredible performance that you put on, Stephanie. So I'm really, really glad that we were able to make this appointment to have a great conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting with you.
That's awesome. So I'd love it if you'd share a little bit about yourself in your own words for our listeners.
Sure. So I'm an aerial acrobat. That's what Kitty saw me performing at the Open Love event. That's been my world for the last 13 years, going on 14 now. It's taken me all over the world. It's been an incredible experience to be able to travel and work and drop into new cultures in different places. And now I'm back home in Miami. So I'm originally from Miami and back home here. I've been back here for about 3 years. And in the last 4 years, I've just been really diving deeper into myself, my own spiritual journey. There was I had a very traumatic event, a very triggering event that happened to me a few years ago that kind of set me deeper into my own spiritual journey to really uncover the trauma that had been affecting me my whole life that I didn't really understand up until that point. So the last 4 years have been really deep diving into shadow work, and the last just over a year has been really diving deeper into sacred sexuality. So that has been my journey in the last little bit.
Wow, that's really profound and amazing. And that's neat too, just that you've been doing the aerial acrobatic for 14 years, but the last few years has been some of that shadow work and that trauma work. And I can definitely relate to that. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think I told you when we were at Open Love Experience that I had my own experience of learning how to do pole dancing, and that helped me through some depression and trauma that I had experienced. So just neat to see how that can overlap, some of that healing journey through both mind, body, and soul. So
absolutely. I mean, I think I would say 4 years ago, I really actively started doing shadow work on myself. But as even now, as I continue, I'm I actually started this a long time ago with my acrobatic career, because through moving my body, I was facing a lot of these deep parts of myself and releasing a lot physically, even through stretching that I at the time I didn't fully understand, but now looking back, I can see that was definitely a part of that journey for me as well.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. That's amazing. So I'd love to just go back even further and just get to know you a little bit better, if that's okay. And I love to ask what I call the light bulb question, which is as you were growing up, whether it was young or maybe young adults, like was there a particular moment or maybe a series of moments where maybe you knew that you might be a little bit different than the other people that were around you, whether it was coloring outside of the lines of monogamy or heteronormativity, or just, you were just going to be not following the kind of straight and narrow traditional monogamous path? Was there a moment like that you can describe?
I've always had kind of a different viewpoint about my life in general. Like, I would say I've never really colored inside the lines in any way. So there was, when I was younger, like a lot of girls growing up would dream about their wedding. And even when I was 12, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get married. Like it was just this kind of, and at this point, I don't know if I will or I won't, but it was not something that I fantasized about. I didn't fantasize about like the typical, dream life that people have when they're kids, or that they see in the world around them. And I didn't really know, like I didn't see really any close situation that I could really say like, oh, well, that's what I really want. But I knew, okay, that's not what I want. 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 So I felt like for a long time there was a lot of that, of like not identifying with the way that anyone that I saw was really living their life. And then at some point, I don't even remember when it was, but at some point, I had this like, it felt like this very soul knowing of like that part of my path was to be to like, that I wanted to trust love enough that like it wouldn't matter how many people my partner was with, that I would trust that love was still there. And when I started saying this and even speaking this out loud to my friends, this was over 10 years ago.
Wow.
But like, I was like, I don't know how to get there. Like, I don't know how to do this, but like, this really feels like part of my soul journey in this lifetime, that like, this is something I really want to be able to do, is like to trust love enough, and now that's really shifted for me in a certain way. Like, it has this other element of just trusting love, that whether or not, like, if I'm in connection with someone, it's not only about trusting that like our connection is there if there's other people in their orbit, but also that to trust love enough to carry me if I'm not meant to be in that connection anymore as well. So then that trusting and surrendering completely, allowing love to kind of take me where I'm meant to be, and really feeling into that and being able to follow that.
Wow, that's really beautiful, just the way you describe that. And to me, it speaks a lot to self-love, like trusting yourself and self-acceptance, knowing that you'll be fine no matter what, kind of honoring your individuality and your way to navigate through the forest, so to speak, of love and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, I've been in monogamous situations, like relationships in the past, and I really felt like I hit there was just a lot of tension, a lot of problems, even in the way that I wanted to have friendships. And I felt like I couldn't even express myself fully in my friendships in like the typical monogamous container. And so that's really for me when I started to like be like, okay, this isn't working. There has to be something else, and I don't feel like I put myself in any box, really. Like I don't put myself in, I'm not monogamous. I'm the word polyamory kind of makes me feel pressure to have connection with a lot of different people. So I just I just see myself more as like a free being that is following my own inner guidance, the way that I want to connect and engage with other people in the world.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so a lot of times especially when coloring outside of the lines of what, say, the majority of folks are doing with traditional monogamy, there can be some challenges, especially if we don't have a lot of role models, whether in our everyday life or on TV. So I'm curious, what were some of the different challenges that maybe you experienced as you were being a free spirit and coloring outside of the lines in general in your life?
I mean, I think the most challenging thing for me was to get to a place where I could really express my truth to myself, and then be able to express it to other people, because I'd never been taught, like, not even talking about like relating, but even like how to speak my own truth in any sort of social environment. I very much grew up as a people pleaser. I was like afraid to really show my true colors in any situation. And so you add that on top of like different relating dynamics, and it was really hard to be able to own that within myself. And I feel like that was the first challenge for me. It felt like this challenge where I was like, okay, because when I'd had monogamous partners, there's like a few times that I cheated on people, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I really don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to like own this and like speak into this. And then it became like kind of like lying by omission. Like, okay, I'm not promising anybody anything, but I'm also not like being really transparent about all the people that are in my world,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of came to this moment where I was like in the same room with like 4 different people, and my internal world felt like it was melting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, this doesn't work either. Like, I'm like taking all of this pressure onto myself because it's just doesn't feel like I haven't been transparent. I haven't felt like I can be that way. And I was like, okay, but it's me that has to shift. Like, I can't expect these other people in my life to shift if it's not starting with me first.
Mm-hmm.
So that became like the real big challenge. It was like, okay, let me just own that, like, yes, I have connection with you and I have connection with you, and like, that's okay. And, I still think that continues to be a challenge because there's, because there are still these social expectations and conditions, and it can still feel isolating to admit these things. But I do, I mean, I do feel that like things are shifting, and like the whole world kind of feels like it's opening up in a different way. But for me also, it's like, I really feel like there's so many ways to love somebody, and even in open relating, so often that kind of gets, we're often just talking about sex, which is a big component of open relating, but also like for me myself, like I feel like there's so many ways that I want to love other people, and sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with sex, and that's still challenging for me to explain to other people, even in the polyamory world, because I'm like kind of in this own sphere where I'm like, well, I just want to do this with this person, and it has nothing, but it's like, for me, it's such a deep connection that I still want to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like sometimes I run into challenge where I feel like that gets misunderstood or misconstrued,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say that's, but now I have more tools to at least be able to express myself and speak into what really feels true for me. And that feels like also a huge relief, to just be able to show up more authentically because of the work I've done on myself, and have the tools to be able to communicate.
Uh-huh. That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. So out of curiosity, how long would you say that you've been doing your best to actively practice some form of consensual non-monogamy?
I mean, I feel like I'm very new at this. Like, I feel like the real testing landscape has only been about a year or so.
Wow.
Maybe
Okay.
just over that. Yeah. So, you know, and there could, you know, it's hard to say when it really started because it feels like, you know, there's just been these different, like paths along the journey of like, okay, I'm kind of doing this, now I'm kind of doing that. And really difficult to say when it really started. But I think, yeah, just about a year ago was when it I would say where it became really just like in the light, like, okay, and transparent within myself of like, that I want to live in my own truth, and I want somebody else to live in their truth, you know, and I don't want to tell anybody what to do, and I don't want to be told what to do, but that, you know, I just want to live in this place of really trying to see the other person and allow them to be in their full expression, whatever, however that means, and, you know, love them from there.
That's beautiful. So, and I really honor that journey and you sharing so vulnerably here with us, because I think it's so powerful just to tell different stories to normalize this conversation. So I really appreciate that. When you think about you owning your truth and honoring your authenticity over this journey that you've been on, I'm curious if there's one thing that maybe you'd either wish you'd known, like maybe a few years ago, or some like advice you could give to the younger version of you that you think would have been helpful. Does anything come to mind?
I think the advice that I would give to younger me is to try to have as much clarity as possible about what really works for me. You know, because there's so many forms of consensual non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, and to just be really clear about like, what is my own truth? What are my own boundaries? What are my own needs? And is this really working for me? Like, is this particular connection really working for me? You know, and also that things evolve and they change and they shift, and, you know, to be able to do that check-in like every day, really, to say like, am I still in this space? Am I really with everything that's going on in my world? Like, what do I really need? Are my needs getting met? And if they're not, then to be able to speak into them. So yeah, that's
beautiful. I think that'll be really helpful for other people to hear. I'm sure that your story is going to resonate with a lot of people listening. So tell me a little bit more first, maybe what you want to about relationships, like where you are currently on your journey. And then we can kind of start talking about being an aerialist and how the tantric work kind of interweaves into that. But yeah, so where would you say you are now?
So right now, for me personally, I'm mostly relating with one person at the moment. But it is like fluid and open for me to have connection with others that I have done, but that they're more like more fleeting connections, people that I've known before but see briefly or something like that. And he is relating with a few other people, so that has, yeah, it's been challenging, but I think it's also been like, when I'm open to the gifts it gives me, it's so beautiful. Like it's really, it's been such an opening journey for me to face myself more deeply and to really open myself to the beauty that those connections can also bring. So it's been surprising and challenging and wonderful. And
yeah, it sounds like you've been doing like some really intense growing, internally and personally over the last few years with this whole journey. So, and which brings me to another question: is what would you say are some new skills that you maybe have acquired over the last year or two as you've been on this very challenging yet beautiful and rewarding and exciting journey?
And what was the question? Sorry.
Oh, what are some of the skills that maybe you've acquired?
Skills.
Mm-hmm. Or some strengths that maybe you've deepened?
Yeah, my communication has just improved like crazy, and that's just been, it's an ever evolving thing. It's like, I feel like the connection that I have now, like we started with amazing communication, and then every bump we kind of hit, we're like, okay, we can get better at this. And
Mm-hmm.
and really leaned into that and leaned into like, okay, what is unsaid, and what maybe there are some expectations or assumptions that we're making about the other that we're not actually speaking into. And so that's been amazing, just to own that and be like, okay, yeah, there are things that weren't being expressed, even though we were actively trying to really communicate as much as possible. But inevitably you find those things that just sideswipe you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So communication is definitely a huge one. And I think, for me, it's been really softening into like this like surrender and trust that like the people in my life really want the best for me. And so I don't know if that's a tool necessarily, but it's like it's definitely like softened me a lot to just interact with the world from a more loving space, to expect more love rather than to expect harshness or brutality or like from an uncaring place. And so I think with every difficulty, with every challenge, it's like, and moving through that challenge and being able to overcome that, it's like it's slowly been softening me into like, okay, there is love here, there is love here, there is love here, there is love here, rather than expecting someone not to be looking out for me.
Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful. I'm glad to hear that too, especially from the journey that you've been on, and that there was different triggers and traumas from the past. I'm glad that you've been able to soften into that. That sounds really healing too, really beautiful.
I think it's like, you want to do some really deep work on yourself, get into an open relationship.
Yeah.
All of your triggers and your traumas and your past shit will emerge really fast. It's also, it's like to really recognize that all of that is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that comes up is really a gift for me. And even in this last weekend, like I received this beautiful gift of like, that I had been realizing that I had been shaming this whole part of my previous self, and making, it was really like the judgment that I had been holding was really judging my former self. Just that I was projecting that onto this other person. And I was like, wow, this is really a gift for me to like integrate this part of myself from just a few years ago that I've been ashamed of, and haven't been seeing her, and haven't been loving her, and haven't been accepting her. And like, so it's, it's a deep process to like own those things in myself. And I really think that if I had tried to do this even 5 years ago, I don't think I would have been ready for it, because I wasn't ready to have the self-responsibility that I do now, to say like, okay, yeah, this is mine, and this is where this is coming from, and this is why this is challenging, and I can see that, and I can like love myself through that.
Mm-hmm. That's really gorgeous. And again, I think that's definitely going to deeply resonate with a lot of people. I mean, it even resonates with me in some of the work that I do or some of the relationships that I have. So thank you so vulnerably for sharing all of that. And I'd love to see how does this interplay, or like what maybe first turned you on to becoming an aerialist and a movement artist 13 or 14 years ago?
Yeah. I've always been someone that really is in my body. Like when I was young, I was completely just obsessed with gymnastics. I didn't want to do anything else. And then when I was about 14, I got too tall to continue in gymnastics. So then I picked up other things. I started dancing. Like I started taking dance classes when I was in college, but knew I was never really going to be a professional dancer, but like just felt the need to move in my body. And it's always like movement has always been a way for me to express these like things that felt bigger than words, like things that like, I'm like, I can't explain this. I just have to like let my body do what it wants. And so, yeah, it was probably about 15 years ago, maybe, that I was back in Miami. I'd been traveling for a while and I was back here, and I had a friend who was working on a cruise ship doing aerial silk, and she was in and out of port in Miami. And she just asked me and another friend, like, do you want to learn some stuff while I'm like the days that I'm in town? And it felt like the thing that had been missing from my life finally found me. Like I was just like completely obsessed with it. I was like, okay, I need to find other places to train. And I found someone who was hanging a silk in a tree at a park. And then my mom actually found this small studio that was teaching. And so then I started going there, and I'd been taking classes there for about a year. And then they were shifting into doing production, and they asked me if I would be in one of their first big productions up at a casino about an hour north of Miami. And so that was like the first real like performance gig that I had, and it was amazing. And I really felt like after that, my life just took off in this completely new direction. I started it as a hobby. I kind of watched people on stage like, wow, that would be so cool. But I never really like pursued it in that way. But because of my gymnastics training, I also had this very like focused and dedicated way of studying something, so that I was really like, okay, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it right. And I want to learn all the techniques, and I want to like, figure this out as it's meant to, rather than just kind of throwing myself into it haphazardly. So that really benefited me a lot. And it just became this way of expressing using my body, and being able to be off the ground felt like even more extravagant. That it's like, okay, there's like gravity can't contain me. I have so many things I want to express, but like, I'm just going to fly into the air.
That's incredible. How cool. When did you say you started to, like, how long did that process take before you could actually get to the performing place? Like, was it just a few years, or how long would that focused discipline that you mentioned, maybe that helped you kind of speed that process up, especially with your gymnastics background?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was between a year and a half, really. Yeah. And it felt like once I kind of jumped on that train, it just took me, like, I felt like I like just skyrocketed, and I mean, my first performance was the fall of 2009. And then that summer in 2010 was I did the whole summer of like this one production. And then a year later, I had met this woman who became I became her aerial partner. She had a duo act and was looking for a partner, and we ended up working together for like 6-7 years traveling.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. So it just felt like I ended up on this shooting star that just took me into another galaxy like, pretty quickly. And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but
That's incredible. Good for you. I'm so happy for you. That's incredible. Yeah, for me, pole dancing was always just a hobby. It never became a full-time thing, but it was just part of my own healing from depression and some grief and loss that I had in my life. And for me, the way I describe it is that I started to just realize that if I could get my body stronger, if I could teach my body new tricks, so to speak, and like you said, defy gravity and go upside down on the pole, well, I could make my mind stronger. I could, carry myself up and out of depression, which is exactly what I was able to do. So I studied that more as a hobby for about 7 years. And then my beloved studio closed down, and I just haven't found one that resonates with me as much. But I'm so excited for you that it just became this shooting star for you. That's a very, very exciting story.
Yeah, I really consider myself very lucky. Like It's just been an amazing journey, and it continues to unfold in really amazing ways. So
that is so cool. So tell me how the tantric work and the somatic healing kind of started to enter that work.
Yeah, so it was, I guess, I really got into tantric work through shadow work. So I'd been like already diving deep into like layers of trauma and like learning about, how trauma is stored in the body and all these things. And had done a few like shadow work retreats, really trying to like pull these things deep within me. And then I did a medicine journey with a friend of mine, who's a beautiful guide, but I've always felt like very connected to my sexual energy. I've worked in a lot of spaces that are kind of, more sexualized performance spaces, kind of, like I've always been very connected to that. It was a big draw for me when I started working in that way. Like even through my performance career, it like took this turn where it was like, okay, now we're going to work also with sexual energy, like being in more like sexy shows and things like that. And it was something that really pulled me in. And I felt like, yeah, this is something I really want to explore. And so I felt like, I was kind of exploring that on stage, which felt really beautiful and really safe. To really like be like, okay, what is it like if I try this energy on, and what is it like if I try this energy on? And to have this, the stage was this space where I could be whatever I wanted and and walk off, and no one would expect me to be that after I left the stage. So it was kind of this really beautiful playground to really kind of like start to explore things. And then through this medicine journey that I did with my friend, like she witnessed this just like coming out of me in a different way. And she was like, you really have a gift here. Like you really have something. He's just like, I think you can really help people. And so then it became like more of a deliberate exploration of like, okay, what is this energy that I feel very strongly within me that I can connect to very naturally, and like how can I cultivate it? How can I use it? Like, what are the benefits? Like, and so I did an ISTA training that was October 2021. And that was really my first introduction into sacred sexuality, of like, because even in performing, it was like, okay, there are these kind of venues that are working with sexuality, but it's, you're also working with the just general population that's drawn to those spaces. So it did feel like, even though we're in this like place where you're supposed to just be free, you had this level of armor on where you're like, okay, but I have to defend myself against, people that don't understand consent, or, having expectations or different things. And so dropping into like the ISTA container was the first time that I felt like I can be sexually expressed and express my boundaries and have it all be respected. And it's actually can be a beautiful space that is full of freedom, because there's not this emotional armor that I have to still carry around to deflect unwanted things. And so then that just became like this other part that I was like cultivating of like, okay, now that I know that this exists, like, okay, where is this going to take me and where is this going to go? And so I had started doing like movement classes that were really geared for like, they started being just only for women to really drop into the body, connect to like the sensual body, the sexual energy, and really like remove the taboo from that, even being like that I can be a woman in my like embodied, feeling good, like alive with sexual energy, and that is like my own, my birthright as a woman to like be living in this vibrant way in my sexual energy, in my own body, that I like, you know, because I feel like even that is so suppressed in so many people. So that like I started this movement class dropping, like that was the intention, to like drop people really much on a much deeper level into their body. And then really suddenly it kind of shifted overnight from like being this space that I had been curating for women. And then suddenly I was like facilitating this workshop at the Tantra Festival in Miami with men and women combined. And I was like, okay, this just became very different very suddenly. But, you know, and it's kind of been co-ed ever since then. And really just finding the gifts of everyone being able to drop into their body and connect to it on a deeper level, and really for what makes them feel good, and how their body speaks to them and how their body moves them. And, you know, it's my deep feeling that like everyone's body has their own way of moving, and that's very much connected to their own like inner guidance, inner wisdom, like, and trying to get people into that space to connect to it from a place of like authenticity, of fluidity, of just what wants to just be born out of you. So yeah, so I'd been like working with that workshop. I was doing about once a month for the last year. I've taken a little break now just to give myself some space to see what else wants to come out of me. But yeah, that, you know, it was beautiful to be able to like facilitate and just watch people kind of evolve and move within one session of like, okay, how comfortable do they feel when they walk in the door, and how comfortable do they feel leaving? And that was just a beautiful process.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then it was June that I decided to get my Tantra certification to facilitate. And that just it felt like such a natural step from doing all this deep shadow work to kind of holding space for people in this one way, and then stepping into like a deeper role of, you know, helping people heal on a much deeper level. And that's just been a beautiful space that's opened for me to be able to facilitate just much deeper healing, much more personal, you know, working one-on-one with people, and kind of guiding them just into their body in deeper and deeper ways.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. I'm really just delighted to hear about your journey. And it'll be neat maybe to have another conversation maybe a few years from now on another podcast episode and hear where your journey took you, because you're certainly right, you know, in the heart of it right now. It's just amazing. Yeah. Is there any upcoming events that you'd love to talk about or share with our listeners here?
Right now, I don't have any events at the moment. I've kind of taken a little break. I'm kind of like seeing where the universe is pulling me at the moment. But I do I have any new events that I do will be on my Instagram, which is I have Fly Stephanie Fly and Somatic Healing Embodiment. And then the website is also somatichealingembodiment.com.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, I'm so glad we got to meet at Open Love Experience. Your performance was absolutely stunning. Really, really appreciated it. And I actually stayed special just partly to see your performance as well as some of the other performers, because originally I was going to be leaving a little bit earlier. So thank you for that, and sharing the sacred spaces that we had there that weekend in a really beautiful way. And I just want to, again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I love the work that you do, both personally and professionally. And so I'm totally rooting for you and cheering you on. And you're absolutely welcome to come back in the future so that we can hear more about your work and how it's going and how this has all been unfolding for you.
Thank you so much, Kitty. It's been really beautiful to chat with you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard, are struggling with some aspect of your relationships, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with me as your relationship coach, here's what I invite you to do next. Head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply, and book a call to speak with me. I'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes, and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, exactly what's not working well in your relationships right now. Number 2, ideally where you'd like to be and what might be getting in the way. And number 3, the exact strategy to get you there, helping to close that gap. Remember, creating healthy, open relationships does not typically happen by itself. Many often need expert guidance to make it happen. We've helped clients all over the world to feel safe, happy, and secure in open relationships while not losing their mind or their cherished partners. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. I'm Kitty Chambliss, and let's talk soon.